Hey everyone, and welcome to Rambling Reviews, where we analyze different types of media and or their cultural relevance. My name's Christian, and this is Batman in Detective Comics number 34. Now, ordinarily, I'd make another snide comment about how, of course, this was done by Bob Kane and Bill Finger, but Bob Kane took all the credit. And I would normally think that this did include Bill Finger. However, according to Comic Vine at least, the creators are listed as all of these guys, and you'll notice Bill Finger is not one of the creators listed here. Now, I've heard of Gardner Fox and Jerry Siegel. I'm sure I'm familiar with their work, though I can't. Um, I think Siegel worked on Superman. It was one of the creators of Superman. But either way, this is where I get the majority of my information for the comics. This is how I know what order to read them in, and therefore to go through them in this review process for you guys and everything. So you'll have to forgive me on my limited knowledge. Of course, this does go back to the fact that we don't really know who made anything of Batman until I don't remember. I think it was 2014. I said before, but so this is something where we have to just kind of take people's word for it after the fact. And this time, he's not listed. Bill Finger is not listed as the writer or one of the writers for this. So what I do want to point out here is all of these writers you see. This is for the entire issue of Detective Comics, number 38, which does not include, which is not just Batman. There were other people because I think I've touched on this before, but basically these Detective Comic issues, and this is also why you don't see Batman on the cover, nor is this titled Batman or anything. We do have the Batman at the top here, but these issues were very much done in such a way that Batman was one of the issues, one of the stories that was told in this issue. However, it wasn't the main issue. Either way, I just noticed that when I was looking over this, who to properly give the credit to. And I think it's a safe bet to say that it was Bob Kane and Bill Finger, as it has been before. But, I just wanted to kind of point that out either way. Now, I had touched on the fact with the last review that the last video in this series, that Batman and the Terrible Dirgeable of Doom, or whatever it was called, where he versed Carl Kruger, may have very well been his first outing as Batman. Not entirely sure. Part of the reason I say that is because, yes, we had the origin of Batman, but we also have this issue here picking up right where the second part of the Mad Monk issue left off. There's a little note in the beginning before the story begins proper where the narrator explains that Batman was essentially on his way back to America after having saved Julie, and I guess wound up in France. It doesn't explain specifically that he was in France, but everything we're going to be going through here, the characters are French, or at least they have very French-sounding names. The villains, so to speak, are going to be French. A lot of French happening here. So let's get into it. We actually open with Batman just kind of, because this is what I'm talking about here. It says Bruce is leaving his hotel, but it doesn't explain where to, where he's at, anything like that. Either way, he runs into an old friend by the name of Jed, and as he introduces himself to him, he finds that Jed does not have a face. Now, I would not blame you at all for thinking that this is the question, because the resemblance is striking. I mean, we have dude in a suit, no face, hat. Wouldn't be surprised if this little illustration for this character here was kind of the precursor to the question. And we're going to see some more precursors that I kind of theorize might be early renditions of some other characters as we move on here too. But no, this is not the question. This is in fact a man by the name of Charles, I want to say it's Mier. Again, very French, so people's names aren't exactly what you might expect. It's Maire. Maire? I don't think it's Mary or Marie. But you'll have to forgive me. I don't really know how to pronounce things, really, unless they're English. Speak English and barely even that. Once Bruce finds that it's not his friend Jed either, he decides to, of course, investigate the matter. Meanwhile, a woman by the name of Carol, as we'll find later, spelled Karel. Just have to point out the strange spelling of people's names and stuff like that because it's just rather odd. But either way, she gets a threatening note from somebody by the name of Duke or Terre, I believe it's pronounced. It's D-U-C, and I'm thinking like a duke, like a title duke. And it's D''ORTERRE. Again, forgive my pronunciation here. You know, yeah, just you know. But anyway, she gets this threatening note and decides to try to get out of town. As she does, she happens to get in a taxi that Bruce is in. Now, I do wonder if this is meant to be something where, like, he actually was kind of tracking her down, knowing that she'd be another target. But either way, once she gets in the taxi, they're immediately attacked. And she mentions that the, once again, pronunciation, Apaches, Appacches, are after her. And no, she doesn't mean Native Americans. The Apaches were essentially, or the Les Apaches, if you will, Les Apaches, I'm not entirely sure how you would say it. I'm sorry, just any French-speaking people, forgive my ignorance here, but um, moving forward, they were essentially French mobsters, which is a bit of a reductive way of looking at it, but that's effectively what they were. They were kind of these these gangsters and these mobsters and such. Only they were French, so oui. So we have this moment where Carol just absolutely freaks out after Bruce understandably asks her, like, what's going on here? Specifically, he says, what's with all the melodrama? I don't know if I'd call it melodrama. It's pretty serious, you know. These people are clearly after her and trying to kill her, but you know, she explains that her brother Charles will be able to explain the situation much better, and he brings her back to their house or his house, not entirely sure. In a midtown hotel, as it explains, which once again, well, no, I guess Midtown. I guess Midtown just means like middle of town. It doesn't mean Midtown New York because I know Midtown. I know Midtown New York because, and admittedly, I only know it because that's where Spider-Man goes to high school. But I know of Midtown. I guess Midtown is. It just means like when they say Midtown Hotel, they don't mean this is Midtown, like the city of Mid. I was going to use it as an example of how we're still seeing that it's not Gotham yet. It's New York, but either way, that's neither here nor there. So the not question explains to Bruce everything that happened here. We have this moment where he essentially explains that they met Duke. I'm just going to call him Duke. I almost want to call him Duck, but it's Deuce. I'm pretty sure it's Duke. Whatever the case. They met Duke at, they call it a ball mask, BALMASQUE. Looked that up as well. It's a masquerade ball. And they met her, or he met her rather. He met them, and as the comic explains, he was enchanted of Carol, which I think essentially means that he liked her. He tried to hit on her, and you know um, Charles explains that he interfered, which again I'm thinking means that the guy tried to maybe came on her too strong or something. She wasn't having it, and so he stepped in to kind of defend her or what have you. The way that a lot of girls have to do, where they'll say like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I have a boyfriend," because a lot of guys won't take no for an answer. On a side note, guys, if you are trying to hit on a girl or whatever, and she says no, just accept it, accept the rejection gracefully, and move on to the next one. Plenty of fish in the sea and all that. All those platitudes. It's true though, like you can always find someone else to date or hook up with or whatever you're going for. Either way though, um, Charles explains how after this event he was captured and taken to a machine where he had his face burned off. Now, the way that the comic explains this here, we don't ever see what Charles looked like before his face was melted off or anything like that, but again, this is not the question. This is just a guy that happens to kind of look like him and had his face melted off by this villain who, at least as of now, is a one-time villain. Again, just like Carl Kruger of the last issue, I'm well aware that these characters could come back years and decades later, as we've seen happen with the Mad Monk, and we've also seen happen with, I want to say there's like a villain we'll come across way later called the Penny Pincher or something like that, but that's way later down the line. So the siblings explain to Bruce how the Duke must be stopped, and they're after both their money as well as Carol herself. And we have one of the funniest moments where Batman literally says, well, I can't help you, but hang on a minute, leaves the room and comes back as Batman, and nobody realizes what's going on. And I find this just absolutely hilarious. The issue even explains Bruce Wayne disappears, but Batman enters. It's like, you really, you can't put two and two together. This is just hilarious to me. So we do here have confirmation that Bruce is in fact in Paris in this story, as well as he heads into the sewer because that's where he was captured. That's where it doesn't say that Charles told Bruce he was captured in the sewer, but it's one of those things where when you're reading this and you see the flashback, you see that they were in the sewer. So obviously he must have told him, they were in the sewer. But I want to point out here, this imagery, we see this again, and if you go back and you read through these comics, you'll notice this pose, this drawing of Batman come up a lot. I think since the first issue, for some reason, whether it was actually Bob Kane or somebody else, whoever was drawing Batman here, really liked this pose and this style of drawing Batman. So this has come up a lot, and I just decided it was a good point now, really, to kind of bring it up. But yeah, moving on. As Batman enters into the sewer, he's confronted by two henchmen who explain as they're chasing him that he's probably a drunk who escaped from a ball mask. I don't know what the obsession with, ball mask, or as we know them, masquerade balls, is with these guys. They think that that's like what the whole world revolves around apparently in this issue, but either way, we have this kind of funny image here where Batman chokes this guy out, demanding to know, of course, where their leader is, when we have the Duke himself show up. And I want to take a moment to mention that I think, and I could be way off base here, but I do think that this guy is kind of the precursor to what we would see as Alfred later. I think this is kind of, an early design that was later used as an inspiration for Alfred Pennyworth. Now, of course, we'll find later that when Alfred is finally introduced into the comics, he looks a hell of a lot different than he does now, as we're used to knowing him. He'll look a lot heavier set, more kind of fat cat, aristocratic type of guy, which I think does, suit him as well. Character will be very different. There's a lot of differences in Golden Age Batman is than what exists as far as what modern audiences know Batman to be these days, but we'll get to all those as we get to them. Batman attempts to attack the Duke and is quickly, well, taken out. It's kind of odd here because we see that the Duke has this type of, sword, like a kind of like a fencing sword before, but now the way he's holding his sword, it's almost like he fired a shot at Batman. Not really entirely sure what it's supposed to be. I'm pretty sure he's meant to be stabbed. And then in the next panel, we see him holding it like a conductor, so I don't know. We then see Batman tied up to a wheel contraption as Duke explains that it's going to spin so fast that it's either going to drive him insane with how quick it's going, or it's going to roll and crush him into a wall or the ground or, something else of that nature. And we have this hilarious moment, yet another, I'm sure, unintentionally hilarious moment, where as it's spinning, Bruce gets out by tensing his, as the comic explains, steel-like muscles and breaking the, again, as the comic explains, leather thongs. And we're not talking about bikinis or panties. They just called these straps thongs apparently. But no, I just find it hilarious that he got out of here just by flexing his muscles. Like, oh, what do you do when you're tied up? How do you break out of leather? Oh, you just tense your muscles and break free. You're out. You're good to go. Like, what? What is this? As Batman jumps off and escapes through a window, he finds himself on the other side of the glass where Duke is watching, and in a world where he wonders, and I wonder, and you reading this might wonder as well, if he's going in mad, because he sees these flowers with all these girls' faces on them, and I mean, it really doesn't make sense as to what's going on. I think that it's meant to be that, yeah, Bruce is like kind of, his head's kind of fucked up from all the spinning, but at the same time, we see in a panel that Duke and his men are watching as Batman's sitting in this room. So I don't know if the whole thing is meant to be a setup, The comic doesn't really explain this, but either way, he sends his goons to now capture Charles and Carol, respectively. Duke ties up Charles to another wheel and takes Carol away, exclaiming that, now he'll realize I'm serious when I ask him about, that I want the money, that it has been hidden away. Batman, in a very strange set of circumstances, somehow is told by the flowers that, how to get out of the room and how to get to where Charles is to save him. Again, this flower thing, I must stress, is never actually explained. It's just kind of here. So I'm thinking, I don't know. I don't, I don't really know what to think about it. This whole section could have been, you know, like taken out, and we wouldn't have this weird flower thing. I don't know if they were going for like a Alice in Wonderland kind of. I don't know what the deal was, but whatever the case, yeah, it's just odd. But Batman makes his way to the knot question and is able to save him by, just kind of using his, not grappling hook yet, still doesn't have that yet, but his rope, as he's been using to swing from and such before, in order to stop the wheel. Charles explains to Batman that Duke has taken Carol and is headed for the highway, tells him to take a taxi, but Batman has other ideas as he decides to take his Batplane once again. And once he catches up to Duke, they have a little bit of a battle on the car here. And we have a moment that I can only imagine must have been very progressive back in the day, because Carol here, she's not just a completely defenseless damsel. I mean, yes, she's tied up and everything, but she fights back a little bit. She kicks the guy here, giving Batman the edge on their battle. At which point, Batman strangles Duke, again upping his kill count, and gets Carol with him out of the car, leaving Duke's body to just plummet with the car into the water, I guess, to crash somehow. Once again, it must be reiterated that Golden Age Batman killed a hell of a lot, like all the time. But either way, once they're reunited with Charles, Carol explains that they're great, but won't you tell us who you are? And he's like, "That's my secret." And until then, au revoir. And he pieces out as Batman does. And that's the end of the issue. Overall, certainly not a bad issue. Definitely one that I feel you could skip if you want, even if you are wanting to go through the Golden Age Batman stuff. Not nearly as egregious as some of the just outright boring issues we'll get to later that I feel can absolutely be skipped, and I might not do a full review on, but just kind of like skim over on our way to other to bigger and better things. But either way, no, this is overall an incredibly good issue. Some people might be, I could understand if you're like reading through these or following these reviews or anything, and be kind of annoyed that there are all these villains and characters that are one-offs and they never come back or anything. But I actually quite like that, especially for, Batman's first early adventures and stuff. He was by himself, Robin wasn't in the picture yet, and it makes sense for him, and really just, superhero characters and fictional characters in general, to have adventures in their life where they just don't, villains and such that they've beaten that just never come back. In Golden Age Batman's case, a lot of them die, like a lot of them die, as we're seeing. But no, I mean, it is definitely a good issue overall. I would definitely recommend reading it if you're interested in following through, the early Batman comics and stuff, or following along with this series or anything like that. But I mean, as far as like memorable things, we have yet again where Batman killed. I mean, it was interesting that this did take place after the Mad Monk thing. Um, I do have my theories that those we did see an early design kind of that would kind of inspire the Question later, as well as that design that I think would kind of inspire Alfred, or at least a skinnier Alfred, if you will. But I mean, of course, nothing of this, the villain, nothing ever comes back. Interesting to see it all take place in France and kind of tackle the Apaches, which again, not the Native American tribe, but rather the French mobsters essentially. So either way, no, I think this is a good issue overall. and definitely worth your read. But other than that, and as always, these are just my thoughts. Let me know what yours are in the comments down below. Follow me on social media for more. Subscribe, ring the bell to stay up to date. Leave a like if you like, and if not, I hope you find something to do like. Later, guys. Peace and love.